Hey everybody, welcome to The Bottom Line. I'm Michael Nolan. Tonight we're going to be discussing Led Zeppelin, not just the band, but Led Zeppelin, the album. You know, if there was ever a template for classic rock, this album is it. And tonight we're going to be discussing why this very album could actually save rock and roll. All right, so first of all, when I think of Led Zeppelin, the very first self-titled Led Zeppelin album, I gotta tell you, emotionally, this is my favorite Led Zeppelin album. Now, when I get down to ranking them, it drops a bit, and that's only because this band just kept making better and better albums as they progressed. Now, Led Zeppelin, in my opinion, they have 9 studio albums if you include Coda. Now there's reasons not to include Coda as a studio album, but we're not going to get into that tonight. I would classify In Through the Outdoor a great album, with Coda being a good album, a solid, good album from classic rock. But you know what? In Through the Outdoor, I said it was a great album, and I don't use the word great lightly here, folks, but I never use the word masterpiece lightly as well. And there is a thin chasm between a great classic rock album and a classic rock masterpiece. And Led Zeppelin, their first self-titled album, is definitely one of their masterpieces. All right, so first of all, in tonight's video, I'm not going to be getting into the controversies over this album, of which there are plenty. We're not going to get into who actually wrote what song, and we're not going to get into what arrangements weren't Jimmy Page's. I've covered those in past videos, and if you want my thoughts on that, go to my Led Zeppelin playlist, and there you can find plenty of Led Zeppelin content. And for the most part, I won't be getting into specific solos or vocal approaches. I may slip into a couple of those as we go along, but basically what I want to do tonight is to cover Led Zeppelin, the album, and why it's a masterpiece, and why it's a template, and why young musicians today should be listening to it until they get it. Now, I'm also not going to be getting into the history of this album and how it was produced in about 30 hours and how Jimmy Page pretty much paid for the whole damn package. But you know, out of all of that history emerges a very powerful Jimmy Page. He is the mastermind behind this album in every single way that you possibly could be a mastermind of anything. You see, he's not just one of the musicians, not just one of the writers, or he's not only just one of the greatest guitar players out of rock and roll, he's not only just one of the great Yardbird guitarists that came out of that band, he's also the producer. He's also the one with the vision for this band, and his vision is peppered throughout it, folks. Now, why do I say that? Well, it's not only the material chosen for this album, it's not only the urgency that this album had to be recorded in, but it's also the length of songs, some of them being quite long, some of them being extremely short, all right? And where they are peppered on this album. You see, that's part of Jimmy Page's vision as well. And his vision including making what would be today nothing more than a practice amp sound like a stack of Marshalls. As a musician, I have studied this album far more than any other Led Zeppelin album, and there's a good reason for that. You see, on this album, as amazing as Jimmy Page is, John Paul Jones on keyboard is fabulous on this album. Robert Plant is at his very best, and Bonzo is there to let you know there's a new level expected in Drummersville. But there's a basicness to the music that even a developing musician, of which I was at the time when I started really listening to this album, is quite attainable. And that attainability to a burgeoning musician at that time, by the time I got to this album, I had been playing guitar for 4 or 5 years. I was getting pretty good at that point. But you could jam with this album. There's only one other album I used to jam to, and believe it or not, that was Carole King's Tapestry. What a wonderful album. Just put it on. If you are a blues rock guitarist, just start noodling with her as that album is on. This album is the very same, folks. Now, the album as a whole has 3 songs that clock in under 3 minutes, 2 that clock in under 5 minutes, leaving us with 4 full songs clocking in at over 6 to 8.5 minutes. Now that's important, folks. Think of that blend of length of song and everything, and think about this being their very first album that they introduce to a possible audience. You see, the right short song to introduce this album that's peppered with really long pieces could either turn a brand new listener off or on, and obviously the answer is this album did exactly that. It turned people on to Led Zeppelin. And so what does the band introduce these listeners to? One of their shorter pieces, Good Times, Bad Times. You know what? Not only was it wise to introduce the album with a shorter piece, and the most powerful of the shorter pieces, no doubt, it was also a song that showcased each and every individual in this band. When you listen to Good Times, Bad Times, you know this band has got some great musicians and one hell of a lead singer. On the very next track, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, and I love the way that these titles were like teenagers spoke. We didn't say, darling, I'm going to leave you. Nah, we'd say, babe, I'm gonna leave you. I love that. But also, this song goes into an acoustic, some of Jimmy's very best acoustic work, and it has a total flavor. Now, with that punch in of the very first tune, we see them going into another dimension, don't we? And that ghostly, ascending guitar howl at 2 minutes and 9 seconds shows you this band isn't just going over into an acoustic sound, but they are coming from almost another dimension. Of course, the door to that dimension would be ripped apart on their very next album, especially with the wonderful cut, A Whole Lot of Love. More on that at another time. With the very next track, You Shook Me, not only is Jimmy amazing on this track, Robert is equally vocally amazing on this track as well. And this is one of those tracks that I am amazed that Jimmy's guitar came from such a small amp. John Paul Jones absolutely shines on this album, exposing to the world that he wasn't just the bass player. This is some of the best keyboard work in rock and roll. This song, I mean, to me, it has more multi-dimensionality than any band could ever hope to muster at the time. On Dazed and Confused, Jimmy uses a very old technique, a descending guitar line, right? We've heard this many times, But listen to what Jimmy does to those notes as he lands on a note. He does weird things. He bends, he twirls, he completely manipulates each sticky note on this song. And you know what? On this song, we hear the Led Zeppelin that would be prominently exposed on other albums to come. With Your Time Is Gonna Come, again, gonna come, I love that. We get a keyboard intro again, letting the listener in on the fact that this wasn't just a guitar-based band. And you know what? At the time, it was all Jimmy's call. Kudos to the man for letting each and every member shine at the very top of their game. You know what? I don't think there was another band out at the time that could have done as much if they had just been offered this song. This song has so much weird Led Zeppelin touches that no other band could touch, if you ask me. A short piece and followed by yet another short piece, Black Mountainside. Here's where I truly fell in love with Jimmy Page more than just being one of my favorite guitar players. You see, he was as good at acoustic guitar as he was at electric. I mean, I gotta tell you, acoustic guitar is another instrument totally than electric guitar. Yes, they're strung the same. Yes, you can play the same chords, the same notes on them. But the whole approach requires a completely different discipline. So what is this band giving us? They're giving us rock's greatest drummer. No, the world's greatest drummer. They're giving us the world's greatest singer. They're giving us the world's greatest guitarist, also an excellent acoustic guitarist. Their bass player wasn't just their bass player, he was also their keyboard player. And every single one of them could write. Of course, Communication Breakdown gets us back into familiar territory, letting the listener know we haven't abandoned you, we were just exploring a bit. And of course, I Can't Quit You, Babe. Listen to Jimmy on this if you ever have the time. It's not just the notes he plays on here, it's the approach to the notes, the snicks and the snacks. This is a lesson in Jimmy Pageology to me. I mean, there's where I started hearing him have something different to say than any other guitarist, including Jimi Hendrix. It was his approach to the notes, how he would actually get those notes to attack with what he had. Of course, How Many More Times ends the album, and it is the longest piece on the album. You know what? To me, this song is psychedelic blues. And again, Led Zeppelin's not known to be a psychedelic band, but there are psychedelic touches, especially on the first two albums. Now, how does this album as a whole, we've talked about it a bit here, haven't we? How does it save rock and roll? Well, here's how. First of all, remember, classic rock was always based on the blues, not hillbilly blues. We're not talking about rockabilly or anything like that. That's where the Beatles got their beginnings, right? And so their blues-based songs coming from that direction were always a little bit more poppier, all right? And everybody's calling them the greatest pop band these days. You don't know what you're talking about. The Beatles are the greatest rock band on the planet and the only one band that could ever possibly challenge them was Led Zeppelin. No, I'm talking about that down-home Delta blues, that Southern USA blues by the great blues artists out of the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s. You see, Led Zeppelin took their roots from that, all right? And they attached a peppering of pop to their stuff and a pepper of like Cream, kind of bands, and even a little bit of Jimi Hendrix in the mix. And they could only do that because Jimmy Page was their guitarist. All right, and then they mixed that into a dough, and they baked the best damned cookies you ever ate, Alice B. You see, that's why this album needs to be almost a holy writing to be studied by up-and-coming bands. And the first lesson is get back to your damn blues. Then develop your sound around that. And if the ingredients isn't quite right, you won't sell. And if the ingredients are, you might have a shot at becoming a big boy. All right, folks, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps with channel growth. And if you're one of my many viewers, I know I have a lot of viewers out there who haven't subscribed to the channel as of yet. And I've said it many times, it's easy. All you have to do is hit that subscribe to the tribe button, tap that top bell icon, and you're there, man. You'll get notified of all of my future videos. Of course, I just opened up the Tribal store. Now, I only have one item up there, but I have a line of mugs that are gonna be coming out that are priced quite reasonable, as well as t-shirts. They're all coming, folks. Now, the reason I've started this store is this year on YouTube, I'll tell you what, YouTube creators are making less and less who are part of their partner program. And so all of your support to the store goes directly to the channel, and I appreciate that. Now, my question to the tribe tonight, of course, is first of all, do you agree with me? Do we need to get back to a more blues-based kind of approach for new bands? Oh, and here's a little bonus tip for you. I haven't watched the video yet, but a certain Rick out there asked the questions in one of his videos, and I'm going to watch it when I'm done filming here. Why don't boomers like pop? And before I even see that video, I'll tell you why, Rick. Because we already experienced horrible pop. I mean, give me a break. I honestly love you. I am woman. Hear me roar. Billy, don't be a hero. Tie a ribbon around the old oak tree. We've had enough of bad pop, and we're not falling for more bad pop these days. All right, folks, I'm Michael Noland. This, of course, is The Bottom Line, and together, I mean this from the heart, folks. Together, you and I, we are the tribe, and I'll see you in my next video.